Here we are again with story time at the Reach Bookstore. And a while back we talked about some different genres that you could be reading over the summer. Some of the ones we talked about were science fiction or fantasy, animal stories with the animals as the main characters, which is a form of fantasy, realistic fiction, stories that could happen, but were still a fiction story, but more realistic. And then we also talked about mystery. So today we want to talk about historical fiction. And historical fiction just means that it takes some events from history and writes a fictional story about that. Some of the parts of the book are actual facts of things that have happened in history, but the rest of the story is a made-up story. So that might be something that you're interested in. The I Survived series is a perfect example of historical fiction, and this particular one talks about the attack of the Grizzlies in 1967, and it takes place in Yellowstone National Park, and evidently that was a year that was a difficult time for human beings and grizzly bears, and they came into close contact many times with some tragic results. These books are written by Lauren Tarshis, and again, they're kind of a quick read, and the interest level is kind of like 3rd through 5th grade, and the reading level is pretty much about at 4th grade reading level. And I'm just going to read the first chapter to give you an idea of whether this might be a book that you might be interested in. And again, this is available at the Reach Bookstore, along with some other historical fiction books that I'll be talking about and showing you when I get done with this part. And again, a whole bunch of I Survived series. And we have some of them here, not all of them. And again, we'll start with our grizzly bear, of course. And now we have chapter 1. And it doesn't look like he's a very, how shall we say, safe animal to be around. And again, knowing that they're wild, it's important not to come up upon one unexpectedly to surprise them. And so they have something called bear spray that a lot of time hikers will take with them, and also it's clapping, making noise, making sure that animal knows you're coming, and also being very careful to stay away from bears, mama bears that have baby bears. That's not a good plan. Baby bears are very cute, but mama bears are very protective. It happened on Tuesday, August 8th, 1967, Granite Park, Glacier National Park, Montana, around 9:30 p.m. Excuse me, it was Glacier National Park that this took place. Grrrr! The enormous grizzly roared with rage. Its dripping jaws were open wide. Its dagger claws gleamed, and Melody Vega was running for her life. Mel had no doubt that this bear wanted to kill her. Just moments before, Mel had been sitting in the peaceful darkness, surrounded by the magical wilderness of Glacier National Park. Owls hooted, night bugs shimmered. But then there were new sounds, sounds that made Mel's blood turn to ice. Massive paws crunching across the ground, wet, wheezing breaths, low, thundering growls. Mel looked into the distance, and there it was, the grizzly. Its silver-brown fur glittered in the moonlight. Mel's body filled with panic, and before she could stop herself, she was running as fast as she could. Within seconds, the bear was after her, its paws crashing against the ground. Mel's heart pounded with terror as she sprinted toward a pine tree. It was small and thin, but it was her only hope for staying alive. She prayed that this grizzly didn't climb trees. The bear was just one leap away when Mel launched herself into the tree. She gripped a low branch, kicked her legs up, and swung them around. But before she could start climbing, the bear was standing on its hind legs. It swiped at Mel with a giant paw, and the claws tore through the flesh of her leg. Somehow, Mel ignored the searing pain, the dripping blood. She clutched the branches with her trembling hands, pulling herself up higher and higher out of the bear's stabbing reach. But the grizzly didn't give up. It pounded the tree trunk, ripped away branches, and bellowed with fury. Grow! The spindly tree shook as though it was as terrified as Mel, and then crack! The branch in Mel's hands broke off. She tipped back. Time seemed to slow as she tumbled through the air, twisting and turning and screaming for help. Down, down, down she fell. Mel braced herself for the crushing jaws and ripping claws. No grizzly had ever killed a human in Glacier National Park until tonight. And the next chapter is 2 days earlier, Sunday, August 6, 1967, Lake McDonald, Glacier National Park, around 8 o'clock p.m. So it kind of goes back in time a little bit. But if that first chapter doesn't grab you, I don't know what's going to. Again, kind of a little bit of adventure in there as well, and danger, and man against nature, or in this case, woman against nature. But an excellent series, and one I think you will really enjoy reading. We also have, for you older readers, Out of the Dust, and this is written about a young lady who was living during the Depression, and it was also called the Dust Bowl years, and it was when farmers had farmed the land and didn't realize how to keep the soil from blowing when the winds came up, and when it got really dry during what was called the Dirty 30s, that topsoil blew across the country, and you couldn't see for all the dust that was flying through the air, and a lot of farmers, of course, lost the valuable topsoil that is what gives crops its nutrition. So it was a really tough time in history, and you had to be pretty tough to be able to persevere and get through that time. So this is Billy Joe's life and how she is going to try to make things work, even though there's a terrible accident that happens during this time, and how she can keep her family together and get through this time. Another one's called Caddy Woodlawn, and Caddy Woodlawn is again about living out on the prairie, and this one can be kind of equated with the Little House on the Prairie series, and it is also a Newbery Medal Award winner for the best words or best story for kids. And I forgot to tell you, but Out of the Dust is also a Newbery Award winner as well. This one's called Hitler's Daughter, and this is a young man who's playing with his friends and telling each other stories. They love to make up stories and use their imagination, but one of his friends made up a story about a young girl who lived during World War II, and her name was Heidi, and she was Hitler's daughter. And so he kind of was intrigued with that story and what would happen if he had lived during that time and his father was Adolf Hitler and was doing all those terrible things to the Jewish people, and how he would have handled that. So again, not a huge read, but again, an older story that you may or may not be familiar with. You might be familiar with the survival stories, and they're, again, take a time in history and make up a story about that. And this is Survival Titanic, and this is about Gavin, and he is working in the ship's galley on the Titanic to earn his way, going from Ireland to America, and he's got lots of dreams and what happens when the Titanic goes down and happens with him. And again, there are a whole bunch of books in this series as well, and I believe we have this one and maybe another one as well. So remember, for the 5 free kids books per family, this may be a historical fiction that you might be interested in reading. This one again is a Newbery Award winner, an older one. It's Across 5 Aprils, And this talks about a young man, Jethro, who is growing up during the Civil War and all the problems that go along with being in that particular time of history as well. And this one is 40 Acres and Maybe a Mule. And this is a Scott Odell Award for historical fiction. And this is what it would be like to be an ex-slave. You've been freed after the Civil War, and you have been promised 40 acres and a mule, and then how you're going to try to live your life now, not as a slave, and to be able to work the land, produce your own food, and be able to make money, and what happens with their life during that time. These are in a Dear America series, and again, historical fiction. This is a Revolutionary War diary of Abigail Jane Stewart, The Winter of Red Snow. So what it would be like to live during the Revolutionary War as a girl. And they have diaries for the stories about the girls, main characters, and then they have journals, which is about boys as the main characters. And we have a few of those available as well. So again, if you're interested in historical fiction, try that for a different genre, and hopefully you are reading, reading, reading. Summer is flying by, just a few weeks left. So school will be here before we know it. You take care, enjoy, and keep on reading. Bye-bye.